The slap echoed off the concrete stairwell, so loud that 2 doors opened on the second floor. Jennifer stood there with her hand still stinging, staring at the girl in front of her. A 24-year-old with a ring light in one hand and a look of pure disbelief on her face, like she'd just watched gravity stop working. "Did you just hit me?" Alexis screamed, her voice cracking. Oh my God, you actually hit me." 3 weeks earlier, Jennifer had been the kind of woman nobody noticed. Quiet, punctual, invisible in the way that hardworking single mothers often are. She packed her own lunch. She never raised her voice. She had spent 14 years building a life so careful, so controlled, that nothing, not grief, not debt, not exhaustion, had ever cracked it open. And then a girl with 300,000 followers decided Jennifer's life made good content. This is the story of what happens when the internet turns a struggling woman into a punchline, and what happens when that woman finally decides to write the ending herself. Before we dive deeper, welcome to Scars and Stories. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Jennifer Marsh had lived in Unit 2B of the Riverside Gardens apartment complex for 11 years, long enough to know which stair creaked, which neighbor's dog barked at exactly 6 a.m., and which parking spot got the morning shade in July. Riverside Gardens wasn't glamorous. It sat on the edge of Columbus, Ohio, in a neighborhood where the rent was cheap because the buildings were old and the landlords were absent. But it was hers, in the way a place becomes yours when you've cried in every room of it. She moved in with her husband, David, back when the complex still felt new to them, back when they were the kind of young married couple who left the bathroom door open and argued about paint colors. David worked construction. Jennifer worked the front desk at a dental office, back before the county job, back before everything changed. 6 years ago, David didn't come home from a roofing job in Dublin, Ohio. A support beam gave way. It was quick, the coroner said, like that was supposed to be comforting. Jennifer didn't remember much about the weeks after. She remembered Emma, 4 years old at the time, asking when Daddy was coming back, and she remembered lying, because the truth felt like something a 4-year-old shouldn't have to carry alone. The life insurance covered the funeral and almost nothing else. So Jennifer did what women like her have always done. She got up the next Monday and went back to work. She found the county job 2 years after David died, a position at the Department of Human Services, processing benefit applications for families who reminded her, every single day, of herself. The pay wasn't much, but it was steady, or it was supposed to be. She was required to be at her desk by 7:30 sharp, and her supervisor, a stiff, humorless man named Mr. Halloway, kept a mental tally of who walked in a minute late. Jennifer had never given him a reason to notice her, not once in 5 years. Her car was a 2009 Honda Civic, silver, with a dent in the rear bumper from a hit-and-run in a Kroger parking lot that she'd never bothered to report because the deductible cost more than the damage. The transmission made a low groaning sound sometimes when she shifted into second gear, and she'd learned to turn the radio up slightly louder at that exact moment, like she could drown out a problem she couldn't afford to fix. On the side, in the hours after her kids went to bed, Jennifer made fascinators. Delicate little headpieces, feathers, beads, tulle, wire, the kind of thing women wore to church on Easter or to weddings when they wanted to look like they'd tried. She learned the craft from her grandmother, who'd made hats for half the churchwomen in her Georgia hometown. It didn't pay much. Some pieces took 6 hours and sold for $35, but it was hers. It was the one part of her life that wasn't about surviving. Her daughter, Emma, was 12, sharp-tongued and fiercely protective of her mother in the way kids get when they've watched a parent hold a family together with duct tape and prayer. Her son, Marcus, was 8 and mostly cared about dinosaurs and whether his mom would let him stay up for the late basketball game. Jennifer's older sister, Denise, lived 2 states away in Savannah, Georgia, and called every Sunday like clockwork. Denise was louder than Jennifer, always had been, ever since they were girls growing up under a father who ran the house like a courtroom where he was judge, jury, and the only one who ever won an argument. Denise had learned to talk back. Jennifer had learned to go quiet and wait it out. They built two very different lives out of the same childhood. "You still letting people walk over you?" Denise would ask, at least once a month, half joking, half not. "I'm not letting anybody walk over me," Jennifer always said. "I'm just not looking for a fight." "There's a difference between not looking for a fight and running from one," Denise would say. "Daddy taught us that the hard way. You just learned the wrong lesson from it." Jennifer never had a good answer for that. This was the life Jennifer had built, piece by piece, out of exhaustion and stubbornness and love for two kids who needed her steady. And it might have stayed exactly that quiet, unremarkable, hard-won life forever. Except that 8 months ago, a moving truck, no, not even a truck, an Uber XL stuffed with 6 oversized suitcases, pulled up outside Unit 3B, directly above Jennifer's apartment. And Alexis Kane moved in. Ruth Callahan, 73 years old and the self-appointed historian of Riverside Gardens, was the first to comment on the new tenant. Ruth sat on her lawn chair outside Building C most afternoons, sipping sweet tea and cataloging every piece of gossip the complex produced. "Well, look at this," Ruth said to nobody in particular, watching Alexis direct the Uber driver like he was staff. "Girl got more suitcases than sense." Alexis was 24. She had the kind of effortless, camera-ready beauty that took Jennifer a full week to realize was actually the product of enormous effort. The extensions, the lashes, the skin routine that probably cost more than Jennifer's monthly grocery budget. She drove a black Hyundai Elantra, newer than anything else in the Riverside Gardens parking lot, with a pink furry steering wheel cover and a decal across the back windshield that read, "Creators move differently." Within her first week, half the complex knew her name because she'd introduced herself to almost nobody in person and to everyone on the internet. Her TikTok handle, @LexKaneOfficial, had just crossed 200,000 followers. She filmed everything, her morning coffee, her outfit changes, her day in my life, routines that showed absolutely nothing of substance and somehow got 500,000 views anyway. Jennifer didn't think much of her at first. Different worlds, different lives, sharing a thin ceiling and floor. That was apartment living. You learned to coexist with people you'd never choose as friends. The first real friction came on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. Jennifer had Emma and Marcus loaded into the Civic, the engine idling, the clock on the dashboard reading 6:24, 6 minutes later than she liked to leave, because Marcus couldn't find his other shoe. She was already calculating the drive time, already feeling that familiar tightness behind her ribs when she noticed the problem. Alexis's Elantra was parked directly behind her, not at an angle, not partially blocking, bumper to bumper deliberately like she'd used a measuring tape. Jennifer got out, walked to the base of the stairs and called up. "Alexis, hi, I need to get my kids to school. Could you move your car?" Silence. She tried again, louder. Still nothing. She pressed the buzzer for 3B 3 times, each press a little harder than the last, and finally pulled out her phone and called. The voice that answered was thick with sleep. "Hello." "Hi, it's Jennifer from downstairs. You're blocking my car." "Oh yeah, sorry. Give me like 2 minutes." It took 17. Alexis came down eventually in an oversized t-shirt, silk bonnet still on her head, moving with the unhurried ease of someone who had never once in her life needed to be anywhere by a specific time. She got in, backed up 3 feet, gave a small apologetic wave, and disappeared back upstairs without another word. Emma was 38 minutes late to school. Jennifer got written up by the front office for the second time that year, not because she was ever late herself, but because Emma's tardiness reflected on both of them in a system that didn't care about explanations. It happened again the following week, and the week after that. By the third week, Jennifer had tried every reasonable approach available to a reasonable person. She asked nicely. She asked directly. She left a handwritten note on the windshield that read simply, "Please don't park behind me. I need to leave by 6:30 for work and school. Thank you." Alexis photographed the note, posted it to her Instagram story with a laughing emoji, and the caption when your 40-something neighbor leaves you a handwritten letter LOL, and received over 4,000 likes by lunchtime. Jennifer didn't see that post, not yet, but Ruth did. "You should see what that girl saying about you online," Ruth mentioned one afternoon, catching Jennifer at the mailboxes. "Don't know if I'd let it slide if I were you." "What's she saying?" Ruth hesitated, suddenly less eager to repeat it out loud. "Just apartment stuff, nothing worth losing sleep over." Jennifer let it go. She had a budget report due Friday and a fascinator order for a wedding party of 6 bridesmaids, and losing sleep over a stranger's Instagram story felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She had no idea how much worse it was about to get. What Jennifer didn't know, what most people her age didn't fully understand, was that Alexis wasn't just posting for fun. She was building a brand, and brands needed content, and content needed conflict, because conflict was the only thing the algorithm reliably rewarded. Alexis's manager, a fast-talking 28-year-old named Tyler who worked out of a shared office space downtown, had been clear about this in their last call. "Your numbers dipped 11% last month," Tyler had told her over video chat, scrolling through an analytics dashboard she couldn't quite see. "The skincare deal wants sustained engagement before they sign, not a spike, sustained. What's your highest performing content type right now?" Alexis already knew the answer. The neighbor stuff. Then give them more neighbor stuff. "She's just an annoying lady who parks weird, Tyler. There's not exactly a storyline." "Make one," Tyler said, not unkindly, just practically, the way you tell someone to season a bland dish. "Audiences love an underdog narrative. You're the underdog. Cranky old landlady type versus fun young creator. It writes itself. This could be the difference between a 5-figure deal and no deal at all." Alexis didn't think of herself as cruel. She genuinely believed, in the specific way that only a 24-year-old with an audience can believe, that she was simply being honest, simply being funny, simply living her life out loud the way everyone online seemed to want her to. She didn't think about Jennifer as a whole person with a mortgage and a dead husband and a daughter who cried over spelling tests. She thought about her as a character, a recurring bit. So on a Thursday afternoon, while Jennifer sat at her desk in the county office eating a sandwich from home and half listening to her coworker Maria complain about the office coffee machine, Alexis went live to 200,000 people. "Okay, story time," Alexis said, cross-legged on her bed, ring light glowing warm against her face. "My neighbor downstairs is actually unhinged, you guys, like cerebrally unwell. This woman screams my name at 6 in the morning because she can't afford a place with real parking. And when I don't jump up like her personal assistant, she leaves me handwritten letters. An actual letter. Like it's 1950. The comments started immediately. A flood of laughing emojis, and not the letter, and she sounds exhausting. "She even blocked my car in once," Alexis continued, delighted by the response, feeding off it the way performers do. "Which, I mean, what is that? That's not normal behavior. That's like a cry for help. I feel like she chose this life, the kids, the government job, the whole struggle, and now she wants to take it out on me because I'm actually living. That's not my problem, bestie." 312,000 views by the end of the day. Maria found it first, laughing so hard at her desk that 2 other coworkers looked over. "Jennifer, oh my God, Jennifer, come here." Jennifer walked over already smiling, expecting a meme, a joke, something small. Maria turned the phone screen toward her, and Jennifer watched herself become a stranger's punchline in real time. A video of a girl she barely knew, describing her, mocking her, turning her exhaustion into a bit for an audience of thousands. She chose this life. That's not my problem. Jennifer set the phone down carefully, the way you set down something that might shatter. She picked her fork back up, set it down again. "Jennifer," Maria's smile had disappeared. "Hey, are you okay?" "That's my neighbor," Jennifer said quietly. "That's my upstairs neighbor." The words hung there. Maria's face went through 3 distinct stages: confusion, realization, horror, in about 4 seconds. "Oh my God, Jennifer, I'm so sorry I didn't." "It's fine," Jennifer said. in the automatic way people say things are fine when they are the furthest thing from fine. She stood, capped her lunch container, and told her supervisor she needed to leave early. Mr. Halloway, to his credit, didn't ask why. He just nodded, and for one brief moment, Jennifer wondered if he'd seen it too. She drove home with the radio off, replaying the words. She chose this life, as if grief were a life choice, as if a dead husband and a government salary and a used Civic were things she'd selected off a menu. That evening, she made dinner in silence. Emma noticed. "Mom, you okay?" "I'm okay, baby, just tired." Emma studied her for a moment with the particular intensity of a 12-year-old who has learned to read her mother's moods like weather patterns. She didn't push, but she remembered. 2 days later, Emma came home from school with her backpack straps clutched too tight and her eyes red at the rims, and she wouldn't say why, no matter how many times Jennifer asked. It took until bedtime, Emma sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands before the truth came out. "Jalen showed everyone the video at lunch," Emma said, voice barely above a whisper. "The one about you. He kept asking if we're really that poor. Everyone was laughing." Something in Jennifer's chest cracked clean down the middle. "I'm sorry, baby," she said, pulling Emma into her side. "I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault, Mom." "I know, but I'm still sorry you had to go through that." That night, after both kids were asleep, Jennifer sat at her kitchen table with her phone in her hand for a long time before she finally opened the video herself. She watched it twice. She read the comments, hundreds of them, strangers calling her unhinged, pathetic, a cautionary tale. She watched the view counter tick upward in real time, climbing past 320,000 while she sat there in the dark. The county had announced furloughs that same week. A budget shortfall meant every employee would take one unpaid day per pay period for the next quarter, starting immediately. Jennifer did the math twice, hoping she'd gotten it wrong the first time. She hadn't. It came out to roughly $240 a month she didn't have to lose. And the Civic's transmission, the sound she'd been drowning out with the radio for 8 months, had started grinding for real now, loud enough that even Marcus had asked about it from the backseat. Sitting there in her dark kitchen, unemployed hours looming, a car actually failing, a daughter crying over a stranger's cruelty, and 320,000 people believing she was a joke. Jennifer put her head down on the table and let herself cry for the first time in longer than she could remember. She called Denise the next morning before work, her voice still raw. "I don't even know why I'm calling," Jennifer admitted. "There's nothing you can do." "I can listen," Denise said. "That's something." Jennifer told her everything: the parking, the video, Emma at school, the furloughs, the transmission. Denise was quiet for a long moment when she finished, which was unusual enough that Jennifer almost asked if the call had dropped. "You remember what Daddy used to say," Denise finally said, "whenever one of us cried about something unfair." Jennifer did remember. That crying doesn't fix anything. "Right, and you know what I think now, looking back? He was half right. Crying alone in a room doesn't fix anything. But you were never the one who was wrong for feeling something, Jennifer. You were just the one who learned to swallow it so nobody else had to deal with it. And look where being quiet has gotten you. A girl half your age is out there telling 300,000 strangers you're pathetic, and you're sitting there wondering if you did something to deserve it." "I didn't do anything to deserve it." "I know that," Denise said. "The question is whether you're finally ready to believe it enough to do something about it." Jennifer didn't have an answer yet, but something in her had shifted, quietly, the way a foundation shifts before anyone notices the cracks in the wall. Jennifer's coworker Maria, racked with guilt over how she'd first shown her the video, became an unlikely ally over the following days. But it was Denise, on their Sunday call, who first said the word strategy out loud instead of revenge. "Revenge feels good for about a day," Denise said. "Strategy feels good for the rest of your life. You want to hit her back where it costs you nothing and costs her everything. You don't fight a woman with 300,000 followers on her own platform. She'll bury you there. You fight her where she can't perform for an audience in real life, where there's no ring light." Over the next several calls, the plan took shape, piece by piece. The way a good plan always does, through small, unglamorous decisions rather than one dramatic moment of inspiration. Jennifer would stop rushing in the mornings. She'd park her car inside the complex overnight, directly behind Alexis's Elantra, every single night, without exception. She'd take Emma and Marcus to the bus stop on foot and ride the county transit bus to work herself, a 40-minute commute instead of a 12-minute drive. It would cost her time and comfort. It would cost Alexis her freedom to leave whenever she pleased. And when Alexis complained, because she would complain loudly and often, Jennifer would be endlessly, genuinely apologetic. Her car was having engine trouble. She was so sorry. She'd get it looked at soon. She simply wouldn't specify when soon meant. The point isn't to trap her forever, Denise explained. The point is to make her feel, just once, what it's like to have your whole schedule controlled by somebody else's convenience. Let her sit in that feeling. People don't learn empathy from being yelled at. They learn it from experiencing the thing themselves. Jennifer started that Monday. The first week nearly broke her resolve before it even began. The bus ran late twice. She missed her transfer once and arrived at work 9 minutes past 7:30, the first tardy mark of her career, delivered with a raised eyebrow from Mr. Halloway that said more than any words could have. She came home exhausted, her feet aching in a way office work had never made them ache before, and she almost gave up and moved her car back to its old spot. But then she thought about Emma's face at the kitchen table, and she didn't. Alexis, meanwhile, was having a very different kind of week. She started calling rideshares to get to shoots, to brunches, to the studio where she filmed sponsored content. She didn't mention it publicly at first. Admitting inconvenience wasn't exactly brand-aligned, but her followers started noticing anyway. Wait, why is she always in an Uber now, lol? Where's the Elantra, queen? Thought that was your whole thing. Girl, these Uber receipts have to be adding up, loudly crying face. Alexis didn't answer those comments. She didn't have a good answer. Late one Wednesday night, Jennifer went outside to move her car into position and, without meaning to, overheard something through the thin exterior wall near the stairwell. Alexis's voice, tight and different from the version she performed online, talking on the phone. I know, Tyler, I know, but I can't just make good content appear out of nowhere every single day. No, I'm not saying I don't want the deal. I need this deal. My lease is up in 2 months and I don't. A pause. A sound that might have been a shaky breath. Can you just give me until next week? I'll figure something out. I always figure something out. Jennifer stood frozen in the dark for a moment, keys in hand, feeling something she hadn't expected to feel. Recognition. Not sympathy exactly, not yet, but the unmistakable sound of another young woman also standing on a financial cliff, also performing a version of herself for an audience that had no idea how thin the ground actually was beneath her. She didn't say anything. She got in her car, moved it into position, and went back inside. But she carried the sound of that voice with her for days. She didn't tell Denise about it. She wasn't sure yet what it meant, or whether it changed anything. By the second week, Alexis's frustration had curdled into public mockery again. This time filming the 2 blocked cars, captioning it "My neighbor has officially entered her villain era. Someone start a GoFundMe for her gas money." But underneath the jokes, something in her tone had gone thinner, more brittle. She was performing exhaustion now instead of amusement, and audiences, even ones who loved a good feud, could sense the difference. Ruth noticed it too, sitting in her lawn chair with her sweet tea, watching both women navigate the parking lot like 2 ships avoiding a collision. That girl's not laughing as much as she used to, Ruth mentioned to Jennifer one afternoon. No, Jennifer agreed. I don't suppose she is. By the 3rd week, the strain had started showing on Jennifer too. Wednesday night, exhausted from a 9-hour shift and a budget presentation that had run long, she fell asleep before she remembered to move the car into blocking position. She woke at 2:17 a.m. in a full panic, certain, with the specific dread of a woman who has learned that anything unwatched can disappear, that something had happened to it. She ran downstairs in her robe. The Civic sat exactly where she'd left it, untouched, alone under a streetlight. Nothing had happened. But her hands shook the entire time she drove it back inside, and she sat in the driver's seat afterward for a full minute before she could make herself go back up the stairs. She called Denise the next morning. "I'm tired," she said simply. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." "How long has it been?" 3 weeks. "Is it working?" "Yes, but Denise, I'm not sleeping. I had a migraine for 4 days. I forgot the car outside twice. I'm starting to feel like I'm losing something doing this, even though I know I'm right." Denise was quiet for a moment. "Then maybe it's time to stop playing defense," she said. "You've made her uncomfortable. Now you need to make her understood by other people, not just by you. That's a different move. And it's the one that actually ends this." Jennifer didn't answer right away, but she spent the rest of that weekend thinking about what understood might look like. Jennifer changed her approach the following Monday, and this time, she didn't tell Denise the details in advance. She wanted, for once, to trust her own instincts completely. She parked the Civic directly behind Alexis's car that night, same as always. But the next morning, she walked her kids to the bus stop, boarded her own bus to work, and simply left the car there. Not for one missed morning, for the whole week. Alexis discovered the situation at noon on Tuesday, dressed for a brand shoot she couldn't get to. She stood in the lot for a long moment, hands on her hips, then laughed, a short, sharp, performative laugh, and pulled out her phone. "Okay, my neighbor has officially lost it, you guys," she announced to her camera, panning across both vehicles. "She's blocking her own car in now. I think we need to start a GoFundMe. Girl probably doesn't even have gas money to move it if she wanted to." She called a rideshare and left without another thought. But Wednesday, the car was still there. Thursday, still there. By Friday morning, a visibly frustrated Alexis pounded on Jennifer's door before either of them had left for the day. "You need to move your car," Alexis said, arms crossed, none of her online performance left in her voice. "I'm so sorry," Jennifer said, and she sounded like she meant it, because in a strange way she did sorry for all of it, sorry it had come to this. "It's having engine trouble. I'm handling it." Reassured, or at least out of options, Alexis went back upstairs. Jennifer left with her children an hour later, car still firmly in place. By that afternoon, Alexis had called the property manager, who called Jennifer with visible reluctance. "Ma'am, I've got a complaint about a blocked vehicle." "I know, I'm so sorry," Jennifer said. "The transmission, actually failing for real this time. I've got a mechanic coming this weekend, I promise." That part, at least, was true. She called her cousin's husband, Cole, who ran a small shop out of his garage and had fixed half the cars in her extended family for the price of gas money and a home-cooked meal. Cole came Saturday, popped the hood, and made a show of it, loud enough for anyone listening from the balconies above. "This front tire's completely bald," he announced, holding it up. "You're lucky you haven't blown it out on the highway already." "Where am I supposed to find money for a new tire?" Jennifer said, hands on her head. "When the county's got us on furlough and I still owe on the transmission work." Cole packed his tools and left. The tire situation, conveniently, remained unresolved. Alexis, watching from her window, understood exactly what this meant. The car was genuinely, financially, immovably stuck, and something in her finally snapped. She stormed downstairs Sunday morning and pounded on Jennifer's door hard enough to rattle the frame. "You think I'll let your poverty affect my whole life?" she shouted the moment Jennifer opened the door. "Move it. I don't care if it's broken. I don't care if you're broke. Move it." "I'm working on it." "You should be ashamed of yourself. You're old enough to be my mother, and you're acting like a child because I wouldn't be your personal assistant." And then Alexis shoved her, not hard, but hard enough to catch Jennifer off balance against her own doorframe. Something in Jennifer that had been coiled tight for weeks, for years, really, longer than this fight, longer than this girl, finally released. Her hand moved before her mind fully caught up with it. The slap landed clean. Alexis's hand flew to her cheek, eyes wide with genuine shock. "Did you just hit me? Oh my God, you actually hit me." "And I'll do it again," Jennifer said quietly, and stepped back inside, closing the door before her hands could start shaking. That was the moment everything changed. Because Alexis made the mistake so many people make when they're genuinely rattled, she reacted instead of thinking. She called the property manager and used the word assault. She filed nothing formally, but she went live within the hour, tears real this time, voice shaking in a way her followers had never heard. "This woman actually attacked me, you guys. I asked her to move her car and she hit me. This is a safety issue. I don't feel safe in my own home." The comments came fast, but not the way they used to. "Wait, why does she care this much about a car? Didn't you literally mock this woman online for weeks? What did you do first?" Genuinely asking. "Girl, you posted her handwritten note for laughs. This ain't giving victim." Alexis didn't answer any of it. She was too shaken, and for the first time in months, the algorithm wasn't fully on her side. The next day at work, Maria, who'd been quietly following the whole saga with something between guilt and fierce loyalty, pulled Jennifer aside. "She's winning the story right now," Maria said. "You're the one who hit her, that's the headline, but nobody knows the other 11 weeks. If they did, this would look completely different." "I don't know how to tell that story," Jennifer admitted. "I've never done anything like that." "Then let's figure it out together," Maria said. "Denise is right about one thing: you need people to understand, not just you to feel better." That weekend, Maria helped Jennifer set up a simple ring light in her living room, bought from a discount bin at Walmart for $11. Jennifer sat in front of her own camera for the first time in her life, feeling every bit as exposed as she'd feared she would. She pressed record anyway. "Hi," she said. "My name is Jennifer. Some of you may have already seen a video about me, the crazy neighbor from a TikTok you might have come across recently. I want to tell you what actually happened from the beginning." She spoke for almost 14 minutes. She talked about David, about the furloughs, about the actual transmission grinding under her actual car, about Emma coming home crying because a boy at school had repeated cruel words back at her. She explained the parking, honestly, not as random spite, but as the only language she'd had left after every reasonable one had failed. And she talked about the slap without excusing it, only explaining it. 11 weeks of humiliation, reaching its natural human limit. She posted it and tagged Alexis's account, and then she closed her laptop and went to make dinner, because whatever happened next, her kids still needed to eat. The video moved slowly at first, 40 shares by dinner time, then 200 by bedtime, and then, sometime around midnight, it found the right combination of viewers and it simply took off. By morning, it had 30,000 views. By that afternoon, 400,000. Ruth was one of the first people in the complex to comment publicly, posting underneath Alexis's own account with the blunt honesty of a woman who'd spent 73 years done with pretending. "I live in this complex. I watched this happen for weeks. That woman was mocked and humiliated for entertainment before she ever touched anyone's car. Y'all should hear the whole story before you decide who the villain is." Ruth's comment alone got picked up and screenshotted onto 3 different pages. The tide turned fast and completely, the way it does when an audience realizes it's been laughing at the wrong person. Comments flooded Jennifer's video instead. "She's a widow. This is heartbreaking. I unfollowed the other girl immediately. We support you, Jennifer." Someone asked, almost as an afterthought, buried in the hundreds of comments, "What's your business?" I saw her mention fascinators. Maria, reading over Jennifer's shoulder, practically shouted, "You're fascinators. Tell them about the fascinators." That same week, Jennifer built a simple Facebook page and posted photos of pieces she'd made over the past several years. The beadwork, the careful wire shaping, the hours of patient, invisible work. She filmed her hands assembling a new piece, close enough to see every detail. By the following Sunday, she had over 16,000 followers. By Wednesday, real orders were coming in from 3 different states. Meanwhile, Tyler called Alexis with the kind of tone that ends careers, gently instead of loudly. "The skincare brand pulled out," he said. "I'm sorry. This isn't the kind of authentic they were looking for. Alexis sat alone in her apartment that night, the ring light off for the first time in months, and, for what might have been the first genuine moment she'd had on camera or off in a long while, she cried without an audience. A week later, there was a knock on Jennifer's door. It was Alexis, without her phone, without her ring light, looking smaller than Jennifer had ever seen her. "I'm sorry," Alexis said, and her voice cracked in a way that sounded, finally, unrehearsed. "I was wrong. I turned you into content because I needed the views, and I never once thought about what it actually cost you. I'm sorry." Jennifer studied her for a long moment. This girl who was cruel and desperate and 24, and, underneath all three things, just as afraid of losing everything as Jennifer had been. "Thank you for saying that," Jennifer said. "I accept it." It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even really forgiveness, not fully, not yet. But it was closure, which was more than either of them had had in months. 6 months later, Jennifer's fascinator business, now operating under the name Marsh and Marigold, had partnered with 2 boutique bridal shops and hired Emma part-time after school to help with packaging. The Civic finally got its transmission fixed, paid for in full by 3 months of steady online orders. No staged repairs required this time. Jennifer still worked at the county office. She still packed her own lunch. But there was a fullness in her days now that hadn't been there before, not because she'd beaten anyone, but because she'd finally stopped being quiet about what she was worth. She visited David's grave that spring, something she did a few times a year, and she sat on the grass beside the headstone the way she always had, talking to him the way you talk to someone you still haven't finished loving. "You'd have laughed at the whole thing," she told him. "The parking war, the tire, Denise calling it strategy like she's running a campaign." She smiled, quiet to herself. "I think you'd have been proud, though. I finally stopped swallowing it." Alexis moved out of Riverside Gardens that winter into a smaller place across town, working a steady job at a marketing firm during the day and posting far less, far more carefully than she used to. Jennifer heard through Ruth, who heard through everyone, that she seemed to be doing better. Genuinely. Jennifer meant it when she hoped that was true. The moral of this story isn't really about revenge, even though there's a certain satisfaction in watching someone finally understand the weight of what they've done. The real moral is simpler than that. Never mistake someone's quiet for weakness. And never turn another person's struggle into your own entertainment. Because you rarely know the whole story, and you almost never know how much strength is sitting quietly behind someone's patience, waiting. If you enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments what you would have done in Jennifer's position. And don't forget to subscribe to SCARS and SDORIES for more interesting stories about the women who finally stopped staying quiet.